With the Tour de France being decided on the toughest mountain passes, it's important to have a lightweight race bike to get you up the climbs. Here is our pick of 6 of the best lightweight road race bikes, and stick around for our last choice because it might not even appear at this year's race. First up is the Merida Sculptura of Bahrain Victorious. We went to check this bike out at the Criterium de Dauphiné, where we got our hands on Damiano Caruso's bike. He's a key domestique for Australian Jack Haig, so keep an eye out for this bike at the front of the bunch. Okay, so about this bike, I've actually ridden this bike in the team specs, so I've had some good quality time on this setup, and I can tell you that it is one of the nicest bikes to ride, well, ever. It's very light, it's very fast, it's very stiff, but also it's very compliant. It's very, very good over broken roads. Now, apart from my personal feelings about the bike, should we take a closer look? Okay, Bahrain Merida are one of Shimano's main sponsored teams, so it comes as no surprise that we've seen the Dura Ace Di2 12-speed system on this bike. We also have the telltale sign that this is a fully sponsored bike from Shimano because we've got the new power meter. There aren't actually that many of these power meters kicking around, so what we have here is the more symmetrical design. We've got the pod here down at the end of the crank arm rather than at the top. That's generally how you tell the 2 power meters apart. Sticking with this area of the bike, we can see that Damiano Caruso, who is riding the Dauphiné here, is running a 54 to 40 tooth chain set, and well, that is some huge gears up. Now, it won't surprise you to know that as a Shimano sponsored team, they've got Shimano Dura Ace pedals. These things are lovely, and they should do some serious miles before they even need to be changed. Moving towards the wheel set, we have the Vision Metron. Now, the team is supplied with tons of depths, so they've got things for the high mountains, they've got intermediate ones kind of like these 50s, and then they've got really deep ones for the really fast days. They are running Continental GP 5000 TL tyres. That is of course tubeless, and well, we're not really sure what's going on inside there, but we would suppose that the team is running some sort of run flat system. Now, I have taken a look at those run flats. I don't think they're amazing for just everyday riders, but they are brilliant for the pros, because if the pros have a slash tire or a real fast puncture, they can keep riding the wheel safely, and that is a really important factor when racing in a bunch. Moving up to the top of the bike, and we have an Fsa Seat Post. The team is sponsored by the kind of Fsa Vision partnership, so we've got the carbon seat post here, and then up at the front of the bike, what we have here is a Vision Metron bar system. These come stock standard on these team edition models, and well, Damiano Caruso is running a 42mm wide bar. He's also running a 120mm long stem. That's an integrated system, and as you can see, creates a very, very clean design. Finishing the bike, we have 2 things from Pro Logo. First of all, the bar tape up there. That's nice. It's quite a knurled design, so you get really good grip. And then up at the top is a Pro Logo saddle. The saddle that Caruso opts for is the Nago 3. It's got a carbon base and it's got carbon rails, so it's going to be a nice lightweight design. Down at the discs, it's interesting to see that a climber like Caruso is opting for a 140mm rear rotor and a 160 front. That probably just helps in the mountains when they're doing extended periods of heavy braking into each corner. Probably just helps with heat dissipation. While we know a lot about that bike, our next pick is a bit of a risk because it hasn't been anywhere near a serious climb yet. The brand new and as yet unreleased Canyon Ultimate is a bit of an unknown quantity right now, but it replaces a design that is a whopping 7 years old, and the big changes are easy to spot. The new Ultimate has ditched a round seat post in favour of a more aero D-shaped one. It appears to have inherited the adjustable cockpit of the Aero and has no visible external cabling. The new frame doesn't appear to have had a radical revamp, but it has followed the current trend of blurring the lines between aero and lightweight, with some of the improvements no doubt made with watt savings in mind. If there's a party to be had anywhere, it's at the back, which is quite a departure from the current Ultimate. Although the seat stays join at the top tube and have not dropped further down the seat tube, like the Aero, there's a strong D shape at the junction, and the seat tube is straight, with no cutout following the rear wheel. There's still plenty of room between seat tube and rear tyre on this particular bike, suggesting that the new Ultimate will have plenty of tyre clearance. At the front, we see the bike has retained a tall-ish head tube and angular fork, with the big changes coming at the cockpit. The same quill stem included on the current Aero appears to have been spec'd here, which suggests that the same CP0018 Aero cockpit that, after a few bumps in the road to start with, is included on the latest generation Canyon Aero. This means new Ultimate owners will also be able to adjust their bar's width with 3 settings to choose from, and adjust the height by up to 15mm without having to cut or chop anything up. Movistar are a SRAM sponsored team, so they use red ETAP access and zip wheels. Most of the riders seem to be on tubular Competition Pro limited tyres from Continental. With possibly the best paint job in the pro peloton, the Cannondale Super Six of EF Education First was certainly turning a few heads, and while Magnus Cort rode around his homeland of Denmark, mopping up all of the King of the Mountains points aboard the more aero System 6, it won't be long before we see the Palace edition of the lightweight Super 6 making an appearance. The Super 6 is actually set to be available to buy in this colourway, so if you really like it and you have, well, a few grand burning a hole in your pocket, then it could soon be yours. The EF team bikes feature Shimano's 12-speed Dura-Ace Di2 shifters, brakes, derailleurs and cassettes. The chainset is an FSA Powerbox carbon, which uses internals from Power to Max. The wheels are from Vision, and the team has a full range of depths available. It looks as though the team is exclusively running tubeless tyres, which come from Vittoria. Our next bike is a bit of a classic. The giant TCR of Team Bike Exchange is a lovely machine, and we took a look at the bike of Aussie Nick Schultz. A brilliant Tour de France bike, one of the nicest looking paint jobs in the pro peloton is this giant Tcr Sl from Bike Exchange. This is the integrated seat post model. Let's dive in. Right, with this bike, the one standout feature is the integrated seat post. That means that all of this is one piece of carbon. It gets made that way. You've got to measure 3 times and cut once, because once it's cut, if you cut it too short, there's not much room to go back up. Bike Exchange run Shimano Dura-Ace on their bikes, and this is, despite the crankset being the old 11-speed model, the 12-speed group set. So we've got the 12-speed shifters, the brakes that match, we've got the front and rear derailleurs, and then we've got 12 speeds on the rear, and we've got the big old chain rings at the front. The bike that we have here belongs to Aussie Nick Schultz, and he has the new standard 54-42 tooth chain rings at the front, and then at the rear he's combined that with a massive 11 to 34 tooth cassette. Schultz is a bit of an all-round rider, but he does specialise in the hills, and as such his bike is set up with 42mm deep Cadx carbon tubulars. These have carbon spokes as well, and so they are incredibly light and probably very, very stiff too. The tyres that are on these wheels are the Vittoria Corsa G 2.0. These are the tubular model. They are 25mm wide, and they're a lovely tyre. They've got a lovely cotton casing and a latex inner tube, so they're a very, very supple tyre. So when this bike was first launched, it was all about stiffness to weight, and I have picked up this bike with the carbon spoke wheels, the low profile, the narrow tires. It is a very, very lightweight bike. I'd say that it's probably easily down at the UCI's minimum 6.8 kg weight limit, and you could probably build it a lot lighter. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to open up the bottom bracket and see a few lead weights inside the axle. Now, the Cadx wheels, if you didn't know, are a Giant in-house brand. That means that they produce them, and Giant also produces the bar, the stem, the saddle up here. They also do the tape. Really, all we've got going on here in terms of brands is Shimano for the gearing, we've got Giant for everything else, and then we've got Vittoria for the tires. So 3 brands on one bike is not a lot these days. In terms of Schultz's setup, he's got 172.5mm cranks. He's running the 160 rotor on the front, and he's got this lovely little 3D printed number plate holder there. This is a really tidy build, and it's one of my favorite bikes in the pro peloton. But what do you think? Let us know down in the comments below. Now, time for the Trek Amonda, which was specifically developed for being as fast as possible on the famous climb of Alpe d'Huez. The Trek Segafredo riders have a choice of a full range of Bontrager's wheels, and these are set up with Pirelli tubeless tyres. The group set comes with a power meter built in, and the SRAM uses a 10-tooth smallest cog in the 12-speed cassette. The chainrings are generally meant to be slightly lower than their equivalent Shimano or Campagnolo offerings. That said, we do see the pros still using some humongous chainring sizes. The cassette ramps up to a 33-tooth cog. Given the savagely steep climbs on the Tour de France, the riders will likely be getting very familiar with them. The hydraulic disc brakes use 160mm rotors front and rear, which offers plenty of stopping power. With the integrated front end, it is a lovely looking bike. Shame about the font size, I have to say. Our last bike of the day is our left field choice. You might not agree with this, but the Specialized Athos is one of the best climbing bikes in the world. Okay, so this bike has only, to our knowledge, done 1 Tour de France stage in its lifetime. That was in the 2021 edition of the race, and Kasper Asgreen was the lucky rider to have a brand new bike for one day in the mountains. 6 kilos is how little the S-Works Athos Dura Ace Di2 model can weigh, with its lightest colourway when built with the lightest specialised components. To get to that weight, you'd use the Roval Alpinist CLX2 wheels, the S-Works SL stem, and the S-Works short and shallow carbon handlebar, but plenty of paying customers have gone even lighter with fancy components. With the UCI's minimum weight limit of 6.8 kilos in place, there is quite a bit of work for the mechanics to do to get this bike heavier, and one measure that we saw Asgreen using is to bring the weight up using the deeper Rapide CLX wheels. Well, quite simply, their more aerodynamic Tarmac SL7s are pretty easy to build down to the 6.8 kilo limit, so there's no real reason for the pros to use the Athos. But now that it's being used in the Tour, we can call it a Tour de France race bike and talk about it in videos like this. We're sure that you're going to disagree with at least one of our choices, so let us know which ones are terrible down in the comments below, or which bike have we missed. We've got loads of Tour de France tech videos for you to watch, so like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.